Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mike Swanson, editor of WallStreetWindow.com. Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Oh, it's great to talk with you. Some interesting things have been happening the past 2 weeks for sure.
Well, the proposed steel and aluminum tariffs by President Trump have become a political football being kicked across several borders, and the goal lines and the sidelines keep changing.
Well, it seems to me that it's real that Trump is really going to do tariffs. I think at this point that's kind of undeniable. What's interesting about me saying that is Friday last week, the stock market fell pretty good. Dow was down over 300 points. And Trump, made this announcement the day before that he was going to do these steel tariffs. Now, on Tuesday, the stock market rallied, and I was watching CNBC, and I saw people say, well, he's not going to do the tariffs. And that's why the market's going up. The thing about that is on Saturday, Trump is scheduled to give a speech in Pennsylvania in some steel area and expected to be very bombastic about this tariff issue to appease, the people that are going to show up at his rally. And now, of course, yesterday, Gary Cohn, his chief economics advisor, resigned, and he was someone that has been a vocal opponent of this Trump tariff decision. And reportedly in Bloomberg this morning, it was stated that when Trump decided yesterday to, do this for certain, he told Gary Cohn, do you support this? I want you to publicly support it, get on TV and support it. And Cohn supposedly said nothing and, basically refused to do that and ended up resigning. And I think I actually think we live in a very interesting moment in our lifetime in the financial markets that's actually slowly starting to take place. Now, on one hand, there's the news of the tariffs and Trump and the news cycle that just kind of gotten out of control in a certain sense. And increasingly, I remember a year ago we were speaking about Trump, and I was saying it's chaotic and it's dysfunction in Washington, D.C., but at this point, it does seem like Trump is becoming a little bit more isolated. More and more of his advisors that have been close to him are leaving. There's this girl, Hope Hicks, who is like his personal assistant for years, and she's left. Of course, Steve Bannon left months ago, but there's now attacks against his daughter in the press, and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, had his security clearance stripped and so forth. And so these are the kind of foreground events happening. And with Trump, he's kind of trying to control the news. Of course, I haven't even mentioned the Mueller, indicting these Russians or whatever. I know they say that's fake news on Fox, but it is an event. And there's some guy last night too that was ranting and raving, one of Trump's campaign people last year, saying he's refusing indictments. And it's just a sign that story is still going on. And one of the things that also happened before the tariff announcement is the school shooting. And Trump had an event on TV where he said that he thinks the guns should be taken away from any ill people. That makes the NRA angry and his political base of people. Then I suspect the next day, that kind of motivated, one of the reasons he wanted to talk about the tariffs was to kind of change the topic from the gun control. It's just kind of like on and on and on every week, something different, and that's kind of the foreground. And when we see the market go up or down in any given day, that's often, linked to these, news cycle items. But I think there's actually something, hidden that's happening that's really driving, the financial markets going forward. And that's the bond market in the United States. It appears to me that it's fallen into a bear market. The TLT, which is the ETF for the Treasury bonds, is below the 200-day moving average. But if you look at any corporate bond, mutual fund, or ETF, they're all below the 200-day moving averages, and they're down for the year. While the stock market has been increasingly, volatile. So at the same time, the U.S. dollar is down, and so forth. So I think this is something very unusual, or at least something that hasn't happened in our financial lifetime, where bonds go into a bear market ahead of, a future stock market bear market. I don't think the stock market's in a bear market yet, by my definition, which is it has to be below the 200-day moving average, and there's averages acting as resistance. That's going on to bonds, going on to the U.S. dollar, not the stock market yet. But in all the previous cycles of really anyone listening to this show that's invested, at least since 1980, whenever there's been a stock market bear market, the bonds have gone up in the United States. And that's helped American investors invested in both. But I think this time's going to be different. This bear market, when it comes, and for the stock market, I think will be driven by the bond bear market. And when I go look back at the chart, the event that preceded the bonds finally tipping down this year, it actually happened a day or two before that day when the Dow fell 1,000 points last month. The actual event that occurred was the announcement of the Trump administration of the budget for this year, and its projection that we're going to have $1 trillion deficit in next year. And I think that is what is sending, causing people to sell bonds around the world, weaken the U.S. dollar. And the problem with this deficit issue is, if you look back to 2008, under the Bush administration, there was $1 trillion deficit when he bailed out, the government bailed out the Wall Street bank. Obama got in and did stimulus spending, and there's $1 trillion deficit again that year. But those deficits were run during a recession. And then we got out of it, the crisis. The problem now is, if we're running a deficit at the end of an economic cycle, when the next recession does happen, the deficit's going to completely explode. So we really, I think, are creating this, the tariff thing is the foreground of the week, but I think this background event is really going to cause problems going forward, and it's just going to really end up being a mess next year, or whenever people start to notice it.
We'll have more with Mike Swanson right after the break.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE, symbol CRL, and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mike Swanson. Mike, do you buy the Trump tweet that trade wars are good and easy to win?
No, and if I look at the tariff issue itself and use it as an example, the U.S. is running a deficit on tariffs. We import over 19 million tons of steel from the rest of the world. So we're buying steel from the rest of the world more than we are exporting it. And what that tells me is that if Trump does these tariffs, I believe he's going to, it will raise the price for American car manufacturers, beer companies, just whatever you can think of. Any company that is manufacturing with steel, the prices are going to go up. The companies that will benefit, and there will be companies that benefit, are really a small segment of American steel producers. But we were talking before the show, you're telling me they only employ a couple 100,000 people, and they're just a small segment of the American economy. So Trump is really hurting most of the country to benefit a small economic clique in the United States. Now, why would he do something like that? Is he stupid? I don't really think he's stupid, but I will point out that Wilbur Ross, his Commerce Secretary, was one of the biggest campaign donors to Donald Trump in 2016, and he actually organized other people to donate to him. And there was an interview on Bloomberg of Ross that year in which he was boasting of raising over $30 million for Trump in the election campaign. And now he's the Commerce Secretary, and Ross has steel interests. And so he's poised to benefit. So maybe that's the reason. And I'm not trying to suggest that Ross has bought Trump or bribed Trump, but I do think that there's a convergence of beliefs and interests, and for whatever reason, Trump has always believed that tariffs are good, and Ross probably, backed him knowing this guy is going to, do what I want. The problem, though, in general with the whole notion of a trade war is that it's over. The trade war happened in the 90s, really, and there isn't a trade war going on because it was ended back then, and frankly, China won that trade war, and I see it where I live. I live in an area that lost many manufacturing jobs in the textile industry in the 1990s and also the year 2000. It just totally ended, or in the decade 2000. I mean, and these jobs went to Mexico and they went to China, the countries that Trump likes to ran against. However, where I live, nobody believes those jobs are coming back. They were fairly low wage textile jobs. I mean, they employed thousands of people. There's a factory in the town I still live in that employed 10,000 people in the 40s, and in the 90s it was employing about 2,000, and those jobs vanished overseas. Now, the problem is that, as I said, no one believes those jobs are coming back, but a lot of these jobs that left to go to China are now leaving China, and they're going to other countries. So some are going to Vietnam, and for instance, and there's a story I saw that was saying there's some jobs that are going to Africa from China. So all that is something that happened so long ago, and it's just over. You can't change that. We're not going to. It's like farming, right? My grandmother was a farmer. She had 100 acres of corn. Well, that a lot of people were farmers like that 100 years ago, but you're not going to. I don't know anyone that's farming corn today. I mean, the economy changes and things change. You're just not going back to the way things were in the 1990s or before that, the 70s or whatever, the 50s or whatever you want to think of.
Is President Trump stuck in the 1950s when he thinks tariffs will do things for the economy, when clearly global economics say you produce things where they're the most efficient and cheapest?
Well, maybe so. It's a funny way to put it. I mean, look, in the 1990s, political beliefs are probably important to the listener, but because of where I live, and I was seeing these factories leave and people I know lose their jobs, I thought tariffs were a solution, back then. Myself, Ross Perot spoke of this issue, and I, and I thought, oh, these people are right. But that was then, this is now, and I think you may be correct that he is just stuck thinking back in an earlier period where maybe these ideas are right. I don't know. Maybe, I might have been mistaken to think that when I did myself, but he's probably holding this the tariffs are probably something he has believed in a long time, and he hasn't adapted to change his positions or figure out what's the future. I can believe that. In fact, I remember right when he won, I was listening to an interview with a national security expert, and they asked him, do you think Trump is going to make changes actually this was before Trump won. They were saying, who's better, Trump or Clinton? And the guy said that, well, he wanted changes, the person being interviewed wanted changes in U.S. foreign policy, and that I agree with, less interventions overseas and so forth. And he said that Clinton is not going to change anything, so it's more the same of Clinton, which is bad. But then he said Trump says some good things, but he made this point. He said, this person said, I'm in my 60s and I've never run a big company like the Trump organization, much less, been a senator. And for me to do something like that successfully, I would really need to do a lot of learning and the whole new life, right? And he said, my fear is that Trump being 70 and now he's 71, and this also would apply to Clinton, that they are, old and up in years, that they're probably not going to want to learn, how to do all these things or change the way they've operated their entire life. And I think that's what's been proven out with what we've seen with Donald Trump in the past year, that he is probably doing the same sort of stuff that he was doing as a businessman and a celebrity TV star. And one example of this, and I'll shut up, is that I remember reading something before he was elected about his daily schedule, and it said that he would get up early in the morning, I think it was like 6 o'clock, and read the newspapers, watch television, and find out, what people are saying about him, and then call media people to, get his story out there. And then by 10 or 11 o'clock, he would go to work, and for his, Trump businesses. And by 5 or 6 o'clock, he was done for the day and go to dinner, and that's it. And what's interesting is he's actually keeping to that same exact schedule now. He gets up apparently and tweets and watches TV and doesn't get the CIA presidential briefing to about 10, 11 o'clock, and then eats lunch at 12, and he's done by 5. And if you look at the diaries and daily, presidential schedules of past presidents, most of them have had a much more intensive schedule than that. So it's just interesting. But as I said, though, he dominates the news. But in the end, I do think there are bigger things happening, and that say right this week or Friday, the stock market falls 300 points, and say it falls again later, the bonds fall, or whatever happens. He is going to be blamed for a lot of that. People will point to something like the tariff issue or whatever it could be later and say, look, the market's down and Trump did this and he's the cause of it. But the thing is that he did inherit a bubble situation in the stock market. He said that. He was correct when he said that in 2016. Then he started praising the stock market as it went up, but the debt situation is not something he created. However, I would assert that he hasn't done anything to fix either of these two situations. If anything, we're set up for them to get worse with the tax cuts, the deficit, and so forth. The problem with the tax cuts is, look, I benefit from the tax cuts myself. However, the way they were set up, they're permanent for corporations, but if the deficit explodes, they go away for individuals. But yet all the deductions we've lost as Americans are going to remain gone. So, in effect, I think most Americans are going to actually experience tax hikes in the next couple of years. To me, that's just a symptom of what a kind of a mess the whole country really is in, and that is why Trump won. But it's not. There's not less chaos, but there's obviously more, it seems.
We'll have more with Mike Swanson right after this.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Mike Swanson. Mike, if President Trump actually gets his tariffs in place and factories that make steel return to the U.S., he may be deeply disappointed. Because in China, Adidas shut down their factories there that employed 1 million people, moved the factories back to Germany, where it's all run by robots, and a handful of people now have jobs.
Well, that's part of these strange trends that weren't there, in the 90s when people like me thought tariffs could be a solution. I mean, there weren't these robots taking over jobs. Actually, there was an article on the internet that went viral showing robots taking the place of hamburger flippers just a couple of days ago. So it's just, in the end, I think we're in a weird moment where things are going to change in the next couple of years. I'm bearish on I sound negative on the deficit, the economy, the stock market, and all this kind of stuff. But these are cycles, and it's not like the stock market. If it goes into a bear market, it's going to fall forever. I really think there will, the next cycle of growth, when it does happen, will be based on different industries. Won't be based on the steel industry. I don't really know what it'll be based on. I'm not smart enough to figure out the future like that, but people aren't going to stop innovating, even if, robots take over the whole entire steel industry. I think what we need to, people will, entrepreneurs, business people, or inventors, they will look for the next new thing, and someone will figure it out. Facebook didn't exist. Google and Amazon, weren't household names in the 1990s. So something new will come along, and people bringing back dying stuff, it's just over.
Well, we haven't heard much about 3D printing, but I can really see a day where the chassis of the car, the frame, is made maybe in a central factory, but they use plastics to 3D print the car you designed for yourself at the dealership.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's an example of things that it's tough for me to wrap my head around it, but it's probably going to happen. I mean, I can't, it's like science fiction almost, but you can see videos of it happening, and there's people working on things like that.
Well, I just saw a TV article about flying cars. Well, this whole thing of flying cars, look, GM had, or Ford had a patent for a flying car back in the 50s, and the FAA asked them, how many do you plan to make? And they said, 3 or 4 million a year. Well, at the time, there were only 200,000 aircraft in the United States. So you could see why aviation authorities would be a little panicked. And even today, if everybody could have a flying car, how the hell would you control millions of airplanes where right now they're scrambling to control just the current amount?
Yeah, that's a good question, but someone is going to figure out how to make things work better. They will.
Yeah, I still remember the cover of my dad's 1967 Mechanics Illustrated, Flying Cars by the year 2000.
Well, it's like the Jetsons, or watching, that movie 2001 was made 1968, and, some of the stuff in that movie has come true. We got computers that are really smart and think, and, it's almost creepy what computers can do. But, we haven't gone to, what was it, Jupiter yet, but, but some of, people, it's surprising what people can think up and invent.
Well, Werner von Braun, who masterminded the Apollo program, said at the time when they went to the moon, he says, we could be on Mars within 10 years. It's just a matter of political will. Nixon wasn't a fan of space travel.
Mm-hmm. I don't blame him. I don't want to be up in a rocket.
But now we have SpaceX and renewable rockets. All of a sudden, private enterprise has made it affordable.
Yeah. I saw somewhere recently, someone had a private rocket company shooting up satellites, and it would only cost a couple $1 million or something, like $5 million to shoot a satellite up. And they're like, oh, that's kind of crazy.
Well, sure. It used to be $112 million.
Yeah.
So,
but that's an example of, how things are, new technologies come. I mean, it's like, cars. I've got a hybrid car, and, it costs me much less to get gas than it did, before I had it. And people were doing, solar power and all kinds of stuff too, to make energy costs get cheaper.
Well, in the Vancouver area, you'd certainly like to have a cheaper way of getting around with gasoline at $6 a gallon, $1.50 a liter.
Oh, that's crazy.
Well, anyway, Mike, always fun talking with you.
Yeah, good talking with you too. And talk again next time.
My guest has been Mike Swanson, editor of WallStreetWindow.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.